Hello, I'm Hope Logan. I am an actor on Bold and the Beautiful, and many people really love both me and our Bold and the Beautiful drama. So I've come here to share updates about my beloved Bold and the Beautiful. Everyone, please subscribe and support me. If you do, I will keep coming every day with new updates for you. Brooke accepted Ridge's decision with surprising ease, almost too quickly for someone who has always been used to getting her way at Forrester Creations. Her attempt to secure a co-CEO position at Forrester did not unfold as she had imagined, despite her confidence and determination. She had put real effort into persuading Ridge, believing she could shift his judgment in her favor, but in the end, he refused to remove Steffy from her position because he did not want to hurt her or destabilize the company. Although Brooke was clearly disappointed by the outcome, she chose not to push the issue further after Ridge carefully explained his reasoning. On the surface, it now appears that Steffy will continue as co-CEO and everything at Forrester will remain unchanged, settling into a tense but stable status quo. Yet beneath that calm surface, it still feels like something unresolved is hanging in the air, as if the story is not truly finished. That lingering feeling has not gone unnoticed by fans watching from the outside. On online soap opera forums, viewers have been actively questioning Brooke's unusually calm reaction, convinced that she must be planning something behind the scenes. Many believe that someone like Brooke Logan would not simply accept defeat so quietly, especially when it comes to power and influence at Forrester. Some fans argue that her initial frustration, followed by sudden acceptance, feels more like a calculated move than genuine resignation. Others suggest that she may have only pushed the co-CEO idea to test reactions, distract Steffy, or position herself for a different opportunity. There is also a strong belief among viewers that Steffy is too sharp to fully trust Brooke and will likely stay alert, anticipating that another move could be coming. At the same time, Brooke remains deeply connected to Hope's struggles, especially with the painful shelving of the HFTF line, which has left Hope feeling undervalued and pushed aside. As Hope grows increasingly frustrated with the lack of respect at Forrester, Brooke understands just how devastating this setback has been for her daughter. Even though Ridge shut down her attempt to become co-CEO, it does not necessarily mean Brooke has stopped fighting for change. Instead, she may begin looking for other ways to shift power inside the company, whether that means persuading Eric to bring Hope's line back or even attempting a more aggressive move to challenge Steffy's leadership. These possibilities open the door to more intense drama, where alliances could shift and long-standing rivalries could ignite once again, though there is also the sense that time may be running out for Brooke's influence to make a difference. Meanwhile, Hope herself is beginning to consider a major change, including the possibility of stepping away and moving toward Logan, signaling that her patience at Forrester may be nearing its breaking point. This growing emotional tension reaches Hope directly, who feels crushed by Brooke's apparent decision to step back from the co-CEO fight. To Hope, it felt like her last real chance to save HFTF had slipped away, leaving her with very few options inside the company that once defined her creative identity. Brooke's apparent shift in loyalty toward Ridge and Steffy leaves Hope feeling isolated and uncertain about her future, pushing her toward the idea of a fresh start elsewhere. However, even as she contemplates moving forward with Logan and leaving the turmoil behind, there is an emotional conflict building inside her. If it later turns out that Brooke had been quietly working behind the scenes all along to help her daughter, Hope's decision to leave might come with a wave of guilt and regret. In this way, the story remains layered with unresolved emotions and hidden intentions, leaving every character standing at a crossroads where loyalty, ambition, and family ties are about to collide in unpredictable ways. Meanwhile, inside Forrester Creations, the atmosphere begins to shift in subtle but noticeable ways, as if the building itself is reacting to the tension simmering beneath its polished surface. Steffy remains firmly in control on the outside, continuing her co-CEO duties with precision and authority, but even she cannot ignore the faint undercurrent of uncertainty that seems to follow Brooke's recent behavior. Brooke, for her part, maintains a composed presence, moving through the offices with a calm that almost feels intentional, as though every step and every pause is being measured. Conversations that once would have revealed frustration or urgency from her now feel carefully restrained, adding to the growing suspicion that she is thinking several steps ahead. Employees begin to sense that something unspoken is developing between the key players at the top, even if no one can quite put their finger on what it is. In a place built on power, legacy, and control, even silence can feel like a warning. At the same time, Hope's emotional struggle continues to deepen as she tries to reconcile disappointment with the need to move forward. The idea of leaving Forrester and starting over at Logan becomes more than just a passing thought. It slowly turns into a possible reality she can no longer ignore. Yet every time she takes a step toward detachment, memories of her work on HFTF and her belief in its purpose pull her back emotionally, making the decision far more painful than she expected. She cannot help but wonder whether she is giving up too easily or simply surviving a situation that has already moved beyond her control, and underneath all of it lies the haunting uncertainty about Brooke's true intentions, a question that refuses to settle in her mind. Because if Brooke has truly stepped away, then Hope feels abandoned, but if Brooke is quietly planning something bigger, then walking away might become a decision she will one day regret deeply. As the tension continues to build beneath the surface, Brooke finds herself navigating a delicate balance between appearance and intention, carefully maintaining the impression that she has accepted Ridge's final decision while privately observing every shift in the power dynamics around her. Her calm demeanor begins to feel less like surrender and more like strategy, especially as she watches Steffy grow more confident in her leadership position at Forrester Creations. Every interaction, every passing conversation seems to carry new meaning for Brooke, as though she is quietly collecting information rather than letting go of ambition. The history between them, layered with rivalry and emotional conflict, makes even the smallest exchange feel charged with unspoken tension. Yet Brooke says nothing that would reveal her hand, allowing others to assume the story has ended when in reality, it may only be entering a more complicated chapter. In the world of Forrester, silence often hides the most dangerous intentions. Hope, meanwhile, reaches a turning point that weighs heavily on her heart as she faces the reality of her uncertain future. The dream she once built around HFTF no longer feels secure, and the emotional investment she placed in Forrester Creations now feels painfully fragile. With each passing moment, the idea of moving to Logan grows stronger, not just as an opportunity, but as a form of emotional escape from disappointment and rejection. Still, the decision is far from simple, because leaving would mean letting go of a vision she once believed in completely. She feels torn between loyalty to her past and the need to protect her future, unsure which direction will ultimately bring her peace. And even as she leans closer to change, the unresolved mystery of Brooke's true motives continues to linger in the back of her mind, leaving her suspended between hope and doubt, unable to fully commit to either path without wondering what truth might still be waiting to surface. At Forrester Creations, the quiet tension that has been building begins to harden into something more defined, almost like an invisible pressure spreading through every hallway and meeting room. Steffy continues to assert control over the company's direction, making decisions with confidence that reinforces her authority as co-CEO, yet even she cannot completely ignore the sense that Brooke is no longer behaving like someone who has truly stepped back. Brooke's presence remains controlled and unreadable, but there is a subtle intensity in the way she observes everything around her, as though she is waiting for the right moment rather than accepting a conclusion. What once looked like resignation now feels like patience, and patience in a place like Forrester often signals that something is being carefully built out of sight. The employees begin to notice the shift too, sensing that beneath the polished professionalism, something far more complicated is unfolding just below the surface. In a world where power changes quickly and loyalty is never guaranteed, even the calmest moment can feel like the quiet before a storm. Hope, still caught in her emotional crossroads, finds herself increasingly isolated in her thoughts as she struggles to make sense of everything collapsing around her. The shelving of HFTF feels less like a professional setback now and more like a personal loss, something that has stripped away her sense of purpose within the company she once believed would define her future. The idea of joining Logan begins to feel like a door opening towards stability, yet every step toward that decision carries a quiet weight of uncertainty and emotional conflict. She cannot fully detach from Forrester, not when so much of her identity is tied to what she built there, and not when she still feels the lingering pull of unresolved family ties. And through all of this, Brooke remains an unanswered question in her life, a presence whose true intentions remain just out of reach, making Hope wonder whether she is walking away from a situation that is already over, or abandoning a fight that is still secretly being waged on her behalf. As the situation at Forrester Creations continues to evolve, the sense of uncertainty becomes almost impossible to ignore, even for those trying to carry on with business as usual. Steffy remains focused on maintaining stability and control, reinforcing her position as co-CEO with every decision she makes, yet the atmosphere around her feels subtly different, as if the foundation beneath the company is quietly shifting. Brooke continues to operate in that same carefully measured space, neither challenging authority openly nor stepping away completely, but instead occupying a role that feels deliberately ambiguous. Every interaction she has now seems layered with unspoken meaning, as though she is watching, waiting, and adapting rather than retreating. This growing tension creates an invisible divide within the company, where nothing is openly wrong, but everything feels slightly off balance. In a place like Forrester, where ambition and legacy are constantly colliding, even the smallest shift can eventually grow into something far more significant. Hope, still struggling with her emotional crossroads, begins to feel the weight of distance forming between her and the life she once thought was secure. The possibility of joining Logan becomes more real with each passing day, offering her a sense of direction that Forrester no longer provides. Yet, even as she moves toward that potential new beginning, she cannot escape the emotional conflict that follows her every step, especially the uncertainty surrounding Brooke's true intentions. If Brooke has truly stepped away, then Hope feels a painful sense of abandonment that is difficult to accept. But if Brooke is quietly working behind the scenes, then every thought of leaving becomes complicated by the fear that she may be turning her back on something unfinished. This emotional uncertainty leaves Hope suspended in a fragile space between loyalty and survival, where every choice feels like it could reshape not only her future, but the meaning of everything she thought she understood about her family and her place within it. At Forrester Creations, the tension that has been quietly simmering finally begins to take on a sharper edge, as if the calm surface everyone has been relying on is starting to fracture in subtle, almost invisible ways. Steffi continues to push forward with determination, focused on reinforcing her leadership and keeping the company stable, but even her confidence is met with moments where things feel less predictable than before. Brooke remains composed, yet her restraint now carries a different energy, less like acceptance and more like careful timing, as though she is no longer reacting to the situation but quietly shaping her next move from within it. Those around her start to pick up on small inconsistencies in her behavior, brief pauses in conversation, lingering glances, and an unusual patience that doesn't quite match the expectation of someone who has supposedly lost her battle. The result is an atmosphere where nothing is openly declared, yet everything feels charged with possibility, like a storm still gathering strength beyond the horizon. In this environment, even silence becomes a form of communication, and every unspoken moment feels heavier than words. Meanwhile, Hope reaches a point where indecision itself becomes exhausting, forcing her to confront the reality that she can no longer remain suspended between two futures. The idea of stepping into Logan begins to feel less like escape and more like necessity, a chance to rebuild herself away from the emotional turbulence that Forrester has become. Yet even as she leans toward that path, she cannot fully silence the lingering connection to her mother and the unanswered questions surrounding Brooke's actions. Something inside her refuses to believe that everything is as simple as it appears, especially knowing Brooke's history of fighting for what she believes matters most. That uncertainty lingers like a shadow over every decision she tries to make, turning what should be a clear choice into a deeply emotional struggle. And as Hope stands on the edge of change, she is left with one final unsettling thought: that walking away might not just mean starting over, but possibly stepping out of a story that is still quietly unfolding without her knowing the full truth.